The habits that destroy your financial future rarely feel dangerous while you're doing them. That's the problem. They feel normal, convenient, deserved, temporary. They look like little choices, little rewards, little shortcuts, little upgrades. And then one day you look up and realize the future you thought you were building has been quietly traded away, piece by piece, for things that barely even matter anymore. That is why this conversation matters so much. Because most people do not wreck their financial future with one giant mistake. They wreck it with patterns. Patterns so common, they stop looking like mistakes at all. A payment here, an impulse there, a lifestyle standard that slowly rises without permission, a decision to avoid the numbers because looking feels uncomfortable, a promise to start saving seriously after one more raise, one more bonus, one more busy season, one more expensive month. And the dangerous part is that almost none of this feels dramatic in real time. My name is Matthew, and I spend way too much time thinking about money management habits, financial psychology, and the quiet patterns that make smart, hardworking people feel like they're moving forward while their future is actually getting weaker. Here's the thing. A lot of people think financial failure looks obvious. They think it looks like wild gambling, reckless shopping, or someone making outrageous choices every weekend. But here's what most people don't realize. Financial decline usually looks ordinary. It looks like fitting in. It looks like rewarding yourself. It looks like saying yes to monthly payments you can technically afford. It looks like spending because life feels stressful and money becomes the fastest way to feel a little less stressed. It looks like surviving each month without noticing that the structure underneath your life is getting more fragile. And if that sounds a little intense, good. It should, because this is not just about saving a few dollars. This is about whether your future gets stronger or thinner every year you live. It is about whether your income is being turned into freedom or just being converted into recurring obligations. It is about whether your financial life is quietly compounding in your favor or quietly compounding against you. The numbers behind this should make anyone pause. In the Federal Reserve's 2024 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households, only 35% of non-retirees said their retirement savings were on track, and 55% said they had set aside money for 3 months of expenses in an emergency fund. That means a large share of adults either do not feel on track for retirement, do not have a strong cash cushion, or both. And here's where it gets really interesting. Most of those people are not clueless. They're not all financially reckless in some dramatic way. Many of them are making the same everyday money choices everyone around them is making. That is exactly why this topic matters. Because the habits that quietly destroy your future are usually socially approved. They are common enough to feel safe. So before we go deeper, write this in the comments. One money habit I'm changing now. Keep it short and honest. Maybe it is track my spending, stop impulse buying, pay off credit cards, invest every month, or stop lifestyle inflation. Writing it down makes the intention more concrete, and that matters. Once a goal turns into words, it stops floating around as a vague wish and starts becoming something your brain can actually grab onto. That small step increases the chance that you will follow through. Now let's get to the real issue. The main problem is not just bad spending. The main problem is that people build financial lives that depend on them staying emotionally weak around money. That is the part nobody says clearly enough. A lot of money systems only work if you keep needing comfort, approval, convenience, and proof through spending. Once you understand that, everything starts looking different. The first habit that quietly destroys your future is treating affordability as wisdom. This habit is everywhere. Someone sees a purchase and asks one question. Can I make the payment? Can I fit it into the month? Can I cover it without bouncing my account? If the answer is yes, they decide it must be fine. But that is a very low-level financial question. The better question is whether the purchase strengthens or weakens your future. Look, being able to afford something right now does not mean it is a smart decision. That confusion is one of the most expensive habits in personal finance. You can afford a nicer car and still sabotage your long-term flexibility. You can afford the upgrade and still starve your investments. You can afford the trip and still deepen your dependence on your next paycheck. Affordability only tells you whether you can survive the cost today. Wisdom asks what the cost becomes when repeated, normalized, and locked into your lifestyle. Think of it like this. If you carry a 10-pound backpack for 10 seconds, it is nothing. Carry it for 10 years, and it changes your body. A monthly payment works the same way. One payment does not look like a life decision. A decade of payments absolutely does. That is what most people miss. They do not buy one thing. They buy a future version of their monthly life. The second habit is lifestyle inflation that disguises itself as progress. Now you might be thinking, if I earn more, shouldn't my life look better? Sure, to a point. But here's what most people don't realize. Lifestyle inflation is one of the cleanest ways to make more money and still never become financially free. You get a raise. Then the apartment gets nicer. The car gets newer. The phone gets upgraded. The restaurants get better. The vacations get bigger. The subscriptions multiply. The home gets furnished to match the new standard. And before long, your income increased, but your financial life did not actually become safer. It just became more expensive to maintain. This is where a lot of people get trapped because the upgrades feel earned. And some of them may be. The problem is not every upgrade. The problem is automatic upgrading. The problem is when every increase in income instantly gets consumed by a more expensive version of normal life. That is how people become higher earners without becoming more secure. Here is a simple example. Let's say someone gets a raise worth $800 more per month after taxes. If they automatically absorb $650 of that into higher rent, a better car payment, more dining out, and more convenient spending, they may feel richer for a while. But financially, they only moved their pressure line upward. They did not build freedom. They built a more expensive identity. That is why some people earning six figures still feel fragile. They did not fail to make money. They failed to convert income into options. That difference is everything. The third habit is using money as emotional anesthesia. This one is deeper, and it quietly destroys more futures than people want to admit. Because a lot of spending is not about the item. It is about the feeling right before the item. A bad day happens. You spend. You feel behind. You spend. You feel unappreciated. You spend. You are exhausted and the expensive option feels easier. You are bored and shopping creates stimulation. You are anxious and buying something gives you the illusion of control. This is where money stops being a tool and starts becoming emotional medication. Here's the thing. If spending becomes your default response to discomfort, your future gets billed for every emotion you do not know how to process another way. And that is expensive, not only in dollars, but in habit formation. Because every time you solve a feeling with money, you train your brain to repeat that pattern. This is why some expenses feel irrational only after the fact. In the moment, they were doing emotional work. That is what makes them so sticky. You're not just breaking a spending habit when you challenge them. You are breaking a coping pattern. And once you see that, a lot starts making sense. The late night impulse orders. The convenience spending after hard work days. The I deserve this purchases after stress. The sudden urge to upgrade something after comparing your life to someone else's online. These are not random. They are emotional loops. And unless you name them as loops, they keep running. The fourth habit is ignoring small recurring expenses because they seem too small to matter. This sounds basic, but it is one of the quietest destroyers of financial momentum. Not because every $5 charge is life-changing, but because recurring spending changes what your future has left to work with. One subscription is nothing. 14 subscriptions are a pattern. One convenience fee is forgettable. Daily convenience is a system. One impulse add-on does not matter. Habitual add-ons do. The danger is not the tiny purchase itself. The danger is how invisible repeated spending becomes once it blends into routine. And this is where it gets frustrating, because people will stress over major financial goals while letting dozens of minor drains quietly pull in the opposite direction. They do not feel the total cost because they never experience it all at once. It disappears in fragments. That makes it emotionally easy to defend and mathematically dangerous to ignore. The fifth habit is carrying high-interest debt like it is background noise. This one is brutal because it changes the entire financial environment you live inside. Bankrate reported in early 2026 that nearly two-thirds of U.S. credit card holders with debts said they had delayed or avoided important financial decisions because of that debt. And Experian reported the average U.S. credit card balance at about $6,735 in 2025. Now look at the math. If someone carries a $6,700 balance at roughly 22% APR, the interest alone can cost well over $1,400 a year if that balance stays around the same range. That is money disappearing without buying a single new thing. It is like trying to fill a bucket that already has a hole in it. The problem is not only the balance, it is the drag. And here is what most people don't realize. High interest debt does not just cost money. It changes behavior. It makes people more cautious in some areas, more desperate in others, more likely to delay investing, and more likely to feel trapped by income decisions they would otherwise question. Debt does not simply sit there. It reshapes your life from the background. That is why carrying it for too long is so destructive. You start adapting to the pressure and calling that adaptation normal. But normal is not the same as harmless. The sixth habit is confusing financial complexity with financial maturity. This one catches a lot of smart people. They think being good with money means having complex strategies, multiple accounts, advanced investment ideas, constant optimization, endless comparisons, and a plan that sounds impressive. But very often, complexity is just noise. A lot of futures get quietly damaged, not because people knew too little, but because they got distracted by financial theater. Fancy language, complicated tools, constant tinkering, chasing strategies they do not really understand, buying courses, systems, and products that make them feel like they are getting serious while they still have weak fundamentals. Here's what most people don't realize. A simple system followed consistently usually beats a complicated system interrupted by emotion. Spend below your means. Avoid high-interest debt. Save automatically. Invest consistently in sound, diversified ways. Keep fixed costs lower than your ego prefers. Review and adjust. Repeat. That is not flashy. It is strong. If this is giving you a new lens on money, subscribe here. Not because subscriptions magically fix finances, but because it helps this channel keep making practical content that cuts through the noise. And it helps more people find ideas that can genuinely improve their lives before another year disappears into the same patterns. The seventh habit is treating the future like it will automatically be more disciplined than the present. This one is everywhere. I'll start investing when things calm down. I'll save more after the next raise. I'll fix this next year. I'll get serious once this season passes. People keep outsourcing discipline to a future version of themselves they have not actually become. This is a deeply expensive habit because it sounds harmless. It sounds temporary. But later is where bad habits go to hide. The future version of you does not magically become more organized, less emotional, less distracted, and less tempted unless something in the present changes. And this is where it gets really interesting. Delaying good habits does not keep you neutral. It strengthens the opposite habit. If you delay saving, you're practicing spending. If you delay budgeting, you're practicing vagueness. If you delay investing, you're practicing hesitation. That means later is not a clean slate. It is built from what you rehearse now. That is why "I'll start later" is one of the most dangerous phrases in money. It is not just postponement. It is training. The eighth habit is making financial decisions to preserve identity rather than build freedom. This one goes deeper than most people expect, because a lot of money behavior is not really about utility. It is about self-concept. The house that proves you're doing well. The car that signals progress. The spending that helps you feel normal in your social circle. The gifts that keep you feeling generous. The clothes, trips, upgrades, and routines that help protect how you see yourself. Here's the problem. When money starts protecting identity, it becomes very hard to challenge spending honestly. Because now you're not just cutting a cost. You are confronting a version of yourself. And many people would rather quietly weaken their future than emotionally step down from an image they got attached to. That is why some of the most important money decisions feel personal. Downsizing, driving something cheaper, spending less in visible ways, opting out of social norms that are too expensive. Those decisions are not just financial. They touch ego, pride, belonging, and status. That is why people resist them so hard. But here is the uncomfortable truth. A lot of people are financing identity with future freedom, and the future always sends the bill eventually. The ninth habit is not knowing the real cost of your lifestyle. This is different from general overspending. This is about financial vagueness. A person can feel pretty responsible and still have no clear idea what their actual month costs. They know big numbers roughly: rent, mortgage, car, utilities, but they do not know the real total once food, subscriptions, social spending, habits, seasonal costs, convenience, debt, and random leakage are added in. That ignorance is expensive, because if you do not know what your life costs, you cannot know what your future requires. You cannot know how much margin you have. You cannot know what a job change would mean. You cannot know what retirement really demands. You cannot know whether your raise created freedom or simply got swallowed by invisible increases. Look, people avoid this because knowing feels scary. But vague money is heavier than clear money. Clear money may tell you uncomfortable things. Vague money quietly controls you. That is why one of the strongest financial habits is simply knowing your real monthly number. Not your ideal version, not your minimal fantasy, the actual number. Once you know that, money decisions become less emotional and more precise. The 10th habit is spending in ways that keep you financially impressive but structurally weak. This is where all the other habits converge. You can have a right income and still build the wrong life. You can look successful, sound successful, and still be one disruption away from stress. That is what makes this so deceptive. Because structural weakness does not announce itself clearly. It hides inside normal life. A high burn rate, low savings, too much reliance on future income, too much dependence on good months, too many fixed costs, too little cash cushion, too much emotional spending, too little room for error. From the outside, everything can look fine. From the inside, the system is tight, vulnerable, and easy to destabilize. And this is the strongest revelation of the entire script. The people who quietly destroy their future usually do not do it by chasing disaster. They do it by chasing normal. Normal spending, normal upgrades, normal debt, normal lifestyle inflation, normal avoidance, normal emotional spending, normal delays. The problem is that normal is often financially weak. This is where the mindset shift has to happen. Stop asking whether a habit is normal. Start asking whether it is compounding in your favor. Stop asking whether you could get away with it this month. Start asking what it becomes if repeated for 10 years. Stop asking whether other people do it. Start asking whether it strengthens or weakens the life you want later. Because your future is not built by one dramatic choice. It is built by repeated approvals. Every time you say yes to a payment, a pattern, a habit, an identity, a form of emotional spending, you are voting for a version of life. That life may be stronger than you realize or more fragile than it looks. But either way, your habits are deciding it. So what do you do with all this? First, identify the one habit on this list that made you feel slightly uncomfortable. That is probably where the leverage is. Second, calculate the real monthly and annual cost of that habit, not just the emotional story around it. Third, ask what that money could become if redirected for 5 or 10 years. Fourth, make one structural change, not just an emotional promise. Automate, cancel, reduce, separate, simplify, lower, remove. Fifth, stop waiting for a future version of you to become wise enough to start. Here's the thing. You do not need perfect money behavior to build a strong future. But you do need to stop quietly voting against yourself. You need fewer leaks, fewer lies, fewer "I'll deal with it later" stories. You need a life that becomes easier to carry over time, not heavier. And that usually begins with habits that look boring from the outside and life-changing from the inside. So if this script made you recognize a few things in yourself, good. That is not a reason to feel ashamed. It is a reason to act while the pattern is still interruptible. Your future is still being shaped right now. Not next year. Not after the next raise. Not after the next perfect month. Right now. Subscribe, keep learning about money with this channel, and share this with someone who would genuinely benefit from it. And even if they do not realize it yet, there's always someone in your life who would find this information extremely useful. Maybe they're earning well, but building pressure. Maybe they're always busy, but never getting ahead. Maybe they think they're doing fine because their habits still look normal. This might be the explanation they needed. And if you want a next step after this, watch the related video on why financial planning is not working for most people, because it connects directly to what we covered today and shows why so many good intentions keep collapsing under real life. Don't just agree with this. Use it. Find a habit. Break the pattern. Protect the future.